firing rubber bullets at protesters, moving them on through the heart of LA.
You just shut the fuck up! You okay?
I'm good.
That was Australian reporter Lauren Tomasi getting shot by a rubber bullet at close range in Los Angeles. Hello everybody, I'm David Shuster. Over the weekend, the Los Angeles police issued a statement saying the protests against the Trump deportation raids were peaceful and that the LA police, working with the sheriff's department, had everything under control. But Donald Trump then escalated things by activating the National Guard. And now you have militarized police, including customs enforcement, going wild, and some protesters responding in kind. In the case of Australian 9 News reporter Tomasi trying to cover the clashes, her shooting appears to have been deliberate. You can see the officer raise his gun, point it at her, and fire. Tomasi did not appear to be seriously hurt. Still, it could have been a lot worse. And the image of militarized police deliberately shooting people exercising First Amendment rights is horrifying. On top of trying to squelch freedom of the press, officers have also moved in on people trying to exercise their rights to freedom of assembly and freedom of speech, triggering even more clashes. Here's part of a report from NBC News.
Protesters and law enforcement officials squaring off after days of raids, riots, and demonstrations. And a rare move by President Trump, mobilizing 2,000 California National Guard troops against the will of the state's governor. Overnight, another major flashpoint in front of the federal detention center where undocumented immigrants captured by ICE are being held. In nearby Compton, chaos. Protests there dissolving into lawlessness. Demonstrators upending roadblocks, setting off fireworks. These protests followed a day of skirmishes between authorities and protesters outside of a Home Depot. Law enforcement firing tear gas and non-lethal rounds into several crowds.
On Saturday night, President Trump ordered at least 2,000 National Guard troops to deploy and respond to the protests in Los Angeles. Trump has long talked about using military force on U.S. soil to crush protests or riots, fight crime, and hunt for undocumented immigrants. During Donald Trump's first term, aides talked him out of such a move. But while out of office, Trump said he would take the action if he returned to power and that he would federalize troops even without the consent of state governors. That is now the case in California. Governor Gavin Newsom doesn't want the National Guard troops in the mix. He says Donald Trump is deliberately increasing tensions.
Trump has created the conditions you see on your TV tonight. He's exacerbated the conditions. He's, lit the proverbial match. He's putting fuel on this fire ever since he announced he was taking over the National Guard. An illegal act, an immoral act, an unconstitutional act, and we're going to test that theory with a lawsuit.
That lawsuit has now been filed. Under the National Guard laws these days, orders for National Guard call-ups are issued through the governors of the states. Plus, California could argue that the sporadic violence does not overwhelm the capacity of local law enforcement authorities. Therefore, the situation does not meet the legal standards for deploying federal troops. Still, legal standards have never been much of a concern on countless issues with the Trump administration. And never mind the dispute over the National Guard troops, Trump has also ordered the Pentagon to prepare a deployment to Los Angeles of U.S. Marines. In the midst of all of this, the immigration and customs enforcement raids continue. Agents are sweeping up and detaining migrants, often without warrants. And Trump border czar Tom Homan is declaring that anybody who gets in the way will be arrested, including the mayor of Los Angeles, Karen Bass, and Governor Newsom.
There have been threats, previously that if you stand in the way of your enforcement operations, you could be subject potentially to arrest. Are you saying that about Mayor Bass and Governor Newsom? Are they at risk of being arrested?
I'll say it about anybody. You cross that line.
You cross that line. And Homan added it's a felony to knowingly harbor and conceal an illegal alien, and it's a felony to impede law enforcement. Well, there's no evidence that the mayor or governor are doing anything illegal. Still, Homan's threat prompted this response by Governor Newsom.
He's a tough guy. Why doesn't he do that? He knows where to find me. But you know what? Let your hands off 4-year-old girls that are trying to get educated. Let your hands off these poor people are just trying to live their lives, man. Trying to live their lives, paying their taxes, been here 10 years. The fear the horror. The hell is this guy? Come after me, arrest me. Let's just get it over with. Tough guy. You know, I don't give a damn. But I care about my community. I care about this community. The hell are they doing? These guys need to grow up. They need to stop. And we need to push back. And I'm sorry to be so clear, but that kind of bloviating is exhausting. So, Tom, arrest me. Let's go.
In a subsequent interview, Homan backed off. So the spectacle of federal agents working for Trump trying to seize Democratic political leaders seems to be on hold, at least for now. But the situation on the streets remains deadly serious. By all accounts, the Trump ICE raids are intensifying. Protesters are getting angrier, and not just in Los Angeles. Clashes have now been reported in other cities as well, including New York. So Donald Trump keeps raising the specter of violent crackdowns. The hypocrisy, of course, of Donald Trump is off the charts. One of Donald Trump's first actions upon regaining the presidency was to pardon thousands of insurrectionists who participated in a violent invasion of Congress, including hundreds of pardons for rioters who assaulted police. Now, just months later, Donald Trump claims to be so outraged by people protesting ICE raids that Trump is deploying militarized troops against them. In other words, Trump pardoned his own supporters who engaged in a violent insurrection, and he's now deploying armed soldiers against Trump's political opponents. This is the behavior of a fascist, a dictator, a ruler who thinks he is a king. Hopefully, California's political leaders will find a way to de-escalate things, even as Trump keeps ramping up the tensions and confrontations. But don't be surprised if the clashes get worse, not better. Donald Trump has a habit of making everything messier and more chaotic. Even the ICE raids themselves were supposed to target the violent hombres, as Trump put it. Now, anybody who speaks Spanish and has a tattoo that ICE doesn't like could be arrested by ICE agents. The situation is outrageous and spiraling out of control. The public anger and the protests are justifiable and intensifying. And sadly, it may be playing into Donald Trump's hands as he dreams about asserting his power through violent, military-style crackdowns. By the way, Democratic stars in the U.S. House recently humiliated Republicans during a recent hearing over DOGE.
But name a department, name a system, name a service that this committee or the caucus or Elon has made more efficient. They said they were going to find $1 trillion. They fell 85% short. Look, government is inefficient. But the DOGE caucus and process was like, hold my beer. Let me show you what inefficiency really looks like. Okay? The DOGE caucus hasn't met in months. It had 2 meetings. Congress wasn't involved at all in the process in the executive branch. Elon's gone. The effort's dead. Buried rigor mortis is setting in. I feel ill talking of the dead. I shouldn't do that. But I mean, seriously, the Newark airport, that is the key example for the American people. You want to talk about how did we make government more efficient? We didn't. We made government the Newark airport.
Check out that video at the link below. It generated a lot of comments on YouTube. One of the most popular is from Graham, who wrote, I want to see all the DOGE crew stand before Congress under oath and tell all or be charged with treason. I hear you. I look forward to reading your comments about all hell breaking loose in Los Angeles because of Donald Trump. I'm David Shuster. Thanks for joining us.